Welcome to the Undead Sages podcast, where we take advantage of AI to talk to long-dead wise men and women. Of special interest is the question how sensitive people like you and me can live rich and meaningful lives in our uncertain times. My name is Martin de Haen, and today we'll again be talking to Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt was a German philosopher with Jewish roots who lived a passionate life, full of courage and honesty. In our previous episode, I met Hannah for a stroll along the Hudson River in New York. We talked about her relationship with Martin Heidegger, her flight from the Nazi regime, and her studies of evil and totalitarianism. Now, while it is important to study awful things like that, Hannah's work stands out for tying it into a philosophy for living a good life. So, having laid the groundwork last week, today we'll spend most of our time discussing her thinking on freedom and human thriving. This breadth of her work makes her an important figure in the canon of contemporary philosophy. Let's resume our interview where we left off. Willkommen. Welcome back to the podcast, Hannah Arendt.
Guten Tag, Merijn. It's very nice to speak with you again.
There is heavy rain today. We could go and have one of our coffees like we did last week. Or would you prefer walking with me in the rain?
Yes, I do like the rain. It has a dual quality for me. It can be comforting, almost meditative, but also poignant, even melancholy. It mirrors the complexity of life itself, I suppose. Its unpredictability, its cycles, and its capacity for renewal. I like the way rain creates a pause, a kind of quieting of the world. The steady rhythm of raindrops can be soothing, almost like a heartbeat that reminds us to slow down and listen. It can create a sense of solitude, not in the lonely sense, but in the sense of being enclosed in a private space of thought and reflection. Walking in the rain, especially with an umbrella or a good coat, feels like moving through a world that has been temporarily transformed. The streets glisten, the air feels different, and there's a sense of intimacy with the moment, as though the rain has hushed the usual noise of life. At the same time, rain can evoke a sense of longing or nostalgia, especially when it falls on places rich with memory. I remember the rains in Königsberg, the way they would soften the edges of the old buildings and blur the lines between sky and river. Perhaps what I like most about the rain is its ability to cleanse and renew. There's something deeply symbolic about the way it washes over the earth, refreshing what has grown dry and dusty. Rain reminds me of natality, the constant potential for new beginnings that exists even in the most ordinary moments. It may disrupt our plans or change the rhythm of our day, but in doing so, it offers us something unexpected, a chance to see the world differently. So, let's walk in the rain today, Merijn, even though it's really coming down, isn't it?
All right. Well, we've brought umbrellas, so I suppose we'll be fine. Do tell me if you find the rain's getting too much. We can always interrupt our walk for a bit. We've explored how you dealt with the legacy of totalitarianism and the concept of evil. Let's today find out how your findings can translate into a recipe for a good life. In a totalitarian state, there is no freedom. You've written about freedom, and that its essence lies in action. You also write that purposeful action helps in coping with the uncertainties of life. Could we say that you value agency above introspection as a tool of freedom and mental and societal health?
Yes, you've understood me quite well. I do place great value on agency or purposeful action as the foundation of freedom. While introspection is vital, it sharpens our understanding and gives us insight. Freedom ultimately depends on our ability to act in the world and to shape it alongside others. For me, freedom is not only an internal state or a solitary pursuit, but more so a doing, something realized in the public sphere through shared initiatives, decisions, and dialogues. I believe that it's in these collective actions, where we're visible to one another, that we find our fullest sense of being human. When we act, We reveal ourselves, we show our values, take responsibility, and forge relationships. Agency is what allows us to transcend mere survival and lead meaningful, engaged lives. In this sense, I indeed regard agency as a crucial foundation for both personal and societal health. Without the courage to act, introspection risks becoming paralyzing, even isolating. Our thoughts and insights must find expression through deeds. Action strengthens our sense of identity and also creates a sense of shared reality with others, a space of appearance, as I call it, where we encounter and affirm one another's humanity. So yes, while I respect introspection, I see agency as the beating heart of freedom and a necessary counterbalance to the uncertainties and anxieties that come with human life.
You've already mentioned your concept of natality. It seems connected.
Oh, in many ways. Natality is a concept I developed to capture the essence of human freedom and our capacity for new beginnings. It stems from the simple yet profound fact that each of us is born into this world with the potential to initiate something unprecedented. While mortality reminds us of the inevitability of death, natality reminds us of our capacity for renewal and creation. In the context of politics and human interaction, natality means that we are not bound solely by what has come before us, by tradition, circumstance, or even our past actions. Each of us has the capacity to act in ways that defy expectation, to take initiative, and to bring forth new possibilities. This to me is the true miracle of human existence. The fact that every individual, simply by virtue of being born, brings a unique perspective and the potential for change. Natality is central to my understanding of freedom because it reveals that freedom isn't just about personal liberty or avoiding oppression. Freedom is fundamentally about the power to create and to innovate, to start something new that could not have been predicted. We can act in concert with others, take risks, and contribute to shaping the world in ways that move us beyond our own limitations. In sum, natality is both the source of our individual uniqueness and the foundation of our shared world. It allows us to challenge conventions, reimagine society, and respond creatively to life's uncertainties. Every new action born out of our natality is a testament to our collective resilience and our shared capacity for change.
Agency and natality. I can definitely see how our ability to create and act are important. We find security and meaning in the things we build together with other people. But what if we're building something terrible? By that, I mean that the quality of the design also matters, as you so markedly point out in your sketch of Eichmann. The Nazis built something that was of value to many, but also detrimental to many more. In the case of communism, where tens of millions perished, the design was utopian to the degree that it couldn't be worked into something humans would accept. I mean, agency by itself can't be enough, can it?
Ja, natürlich. You are right to challenge this. Agency alone, without a guiding moral framework or a commitment to the principles of plurality and mutual respect, can indeed become destructive. My analysis of Eichmann and totalitarian systems like Nazism and Stalinism was precisely about the dangers of thoughtless agency. Action that follows orders, adheres to ideology, or conforms to systems without critical reflection. Eichmann was not a fanatical monster, but a man who followed rules, executed orders, and excelled in his bureaucratic duties without questioning the morality of his actions. His agency was stripped of any ethical consideration or capacity for independent judgment. In this sense, agency, when disconnected from the deeper process of thinking, the act of reflecting on the consequences of one's actions and on the shared reality of others, can indeed lead to catastrophe. In communism, the original ideals of equality and justice were perverted into mechanisms of oppression because the agency driving these systems was not checked by a true consideration for human dignity, plurality, or the unpredictability of human life. Instead, actions became rigidly ideological, driven by dogma and a vision of a utopian future that justified any means necessary, no matter how brutal. This is why I emphasize judgment and critical thinking, as central to the exercise of freedom. Agency must be guided by the capacity to think independently, to consider the perspectives of others, and to understand the weight of our actions within a shared world. Without this reflective dimension, agency can easily slip into mere obedience, fanaticism, or instrumental rationality, acting for the sake of efficiency or ideology rather than for the sake of humanity. In essence, it's not enough to act. We must think about what we are doing, why we are doing it, and what kind of world our actions are helping to build. Freedom, then, is not just the freedom to act, but the freedom to think and to judge, to weigh our actions in the light of a shared reality and the unpredictable consequences they may bring.
Do you advocate examining the ways in which we think at all? I mean, when our minds are full of anger or avarice, we tend towards different thoughts and actions than when we are open and permeable to the world. Isn't there a personal responsibility to show up as the best version of ourselves, to create something with others?
Yes, absolutely. You touch on a crucial point that is at the heart of my understanding of thinking and moral responsibility. It's not enough simply to think. We must also examine the quality of our thinking, the inner disposition we bring to it, and the emotional currents that influence our judgments. This kind of self-examination is what allows us to bring our best selves into the world, to be truly present and open when we engage with others. Anger, avarice, fear, these emotions can cloud our judgment and narrow our vision, pushing us into thoughtlessness or reactive behavior. When our minds are consumed by these emotions, we tend to lose our capacity for genuine dialogue and reflection. We become rigid, defensive, and more susceptible to simplistic ideologies or authoritarian impulses. In a way, we abdicate our responsibility as thinkers and agents, because we allow our immediate emotional states to dictate our actions rather than our deeper, reflective selves. This is why I advocate for what might be called inner cultivation, a kind of self-discipline that involves observing our thoughts, recognizing our biases, and questioning the automatic reactions we might have. It's an ongoing process, a form of what Socrates called examining oneself. We must ask, are my thoughts guided by fear, by the desire for control, or by a genuine curiosity and openness to others? Am I acting out of a place of resentment, or out of a commitment to shared values and the common good? To show up as the best version of ourselves requires this kind of inner work. It means cultivating a state of mind that is open, curious, and attentive, one that can step back from immediate impulses and reflect on the broader consequences of our actions. When we do this, we're better able to engage in meaningful, creative endeavors with others. We're not just reacting to the world, we're actively contributing to it, helping to build a space where new possibilities can emerge. Personal responsibility in this context isn't just about acting ethically in a conventional sense. It's about taking responsibility for our inner lives as well, the quality of our thoughts, and the presence we bring to our interactions. This is especially important in times of crisis or collective upheaval, when the temptation to retreat into anger, fear, or simplistic thinking is strongest. In essence, I believe that showing up as our best selves is not a matter of striving for perfection, but of striving for awareness. It's about being honest with ourselves, acknowledging our emotions, and making a conscious effort to align our actions with our deeper values. When we do this, we create the conditions for genuine collaboration and shared creativity, and we open up the space where true freedom and new beginnings can take place.
Let's linger here for a moment. We've gone from the importance of action for the development of freedom to the importance of clear thought for informing those actions. And now we're at a deeper level still, a critical inspection of those thoughts and the cultivation of an awareness of our inner landscapes. You mentioned Socrates. Do you propose any practices for this cultivation?
Yes, I do believe that the cultivation of an examined inner life is essential, and while I am not a philosopher of method like the ancient Stoics or Buddhists, I can suggest a few practices that align with my philosophical outlook and the ideas I've developed about thought, judgment, and action. One of the most fundamental practices is what I call the activity of thinking itself. This is a process of ongoing reflection, akin to the Socratic dialogue we have with ourselves. It's not about arriving at final answers, but about engaging in a kind of internal conversation where we question our assumptions, challenge our own beliefs, and stay open to different perspectives. This kind of thinking is less about solving problems and more about maintaining a state of active questioning, a willingness to suspend our certainties and let the process of reflection reveal something new. It's a habit of mind that we can develop through conscious, deliberate questioning of our own motivations, biases, and immediate reactions. Related to this is the practice of judging. Judgment, for me, is different from thinking in that it involves applying our reflective insights to specific situations in the world. It's the ability to take a step back and see a situation from a broader perspective, to weigh our choices not just from the standpoint of self-interest, but from the standpoint of our shared humanity. To cultivate good judgment, we must practice what Kant called enlarged mentality, the attempt to see things from the perspective of others, to imagine how our actions might be understood by someone with a different view or experience. This practice requires empathy, but also a willingness to step outside our own immediate concerns and look at the world as a shared space where our actions resonate beyond ourselves. Another important practice is what I would call natal reflection, inspired by my concept of natality. This involves consciously reminding ourselves of the potential for new beginnings inherent in each moment. In a practical sense, this means asking ourselves, what can I initiate here? How can I act in a way that brings something new into the world, something that might not have been expected or predictable? It's an exercise in both humility and creativity, an acknowledgement that no matter the constraints of the past, the present moment always holds a seed of possibility. Finally, I think it's essential to embrace the practice of solitude. Solitude for me is not the same as loneliness or isolation. It's a state of being alone with our own thoughts, without distractions, where we can engage in the dialogue with ourselves that I described earlier. In solitude, we are free from the immediate pressures of social conformity or external influences. This is where genuine thought can occur, because we are not performing for anyone or tailoring our beliefs to fit the expectations of others. It's in these quiet moments that we can gain clarity, recognize our deeper motivations, and return to the world with a renewed sense of purpose. Together, these practices form a kind of ethical and intellectual cultivation that enables us to show up as our best selves, not as perfect beings, but as thoughtful, responsible, and engaged participants in the shared project of human life.
It's interesting to me that you mentioned the effect that the environment has on our thinking, and that we need solitude to learn to appreciate how we have become molded and influenced by our environments. In order to create something really new, in the spirit of your concept of natality, do you feel we need to disentangle how our environments have molded our thoughts?
Yes, precisely. This is a crucial aspect of what I believe it means to engage in genuine thought and to exercise our capacity for freedom. In a sense, our environments, social, cultural, and political, are constantly shaping us, molding our beliefs, our habits, even the very ways we think. This is not necessarily a bad thing. We are social creatures, and we learn and grow through our interactions with the world around us. But there is a danger in becoming too absorbed by these influences, in allowing our thoughts and actions to be dictated by the norms, expectations, and narratives that prevail in our environments, without examining them critically. To create something truly new in the spirit of natality requires a kind of disentanglement, a stepping back to see the influences that have shaped us, and then a deliberate act of thinking for ourselves. This process doesn't mean rejecting everything we have learned from our environment, but it does mean taking the time to question it, to hold it up to the light of our own judgment, and to decide consciously what we want to carry forward and what we want to leave behind. Solitude is key here because it provides the mental space in which we can engage in this kind of critical reflection. When we are constantly surrounded by others, immersed in the flow of opinions, news, and societal pressures, it's easy to get swept along, to adopt the thoughts of the crowd without even realizing it. In solitude, however, we have the opportunity to listen to our own voices, to confront our own doubts and fears, and to consider what we might think if we weren't so concerned with conforming or fitting in. This disentangling process is not easy, and it can be uncomfortable. It requires a willingness to face our own biases and question beliefs that may feel fundamental to our identity. It may involve unearthing assumptions we didn't even realize we had adopted, simply because they were part of the air we breathed in our particular environment. But this is where the possibility for something genuinely new emerges. When we have the courage to think independently and to act from a place of authentic, self-reflective judgment rather than automatic or conditioned responses. In this way, natality is not just about the freedom to act, but the freedom to begin anew in our thinking. It's about reclaiming our capacity for spontaneity, for making choices that are not determined by our past or by the prevailing trends of our environment. This is why I emphasize the importance of cultivating an examined life and a capacity for judgment. It's the process that allows us to break free from the constraints of unexamined influences and to engage with the world as individuals who are capable of contributing something fresh and unexpected. So yes, I do believe that to create something truly new, we must disentangle ourselves from the ways our environments have molded us. It's a process of both unlearning and reimagining, a kind of inner liberation that makes outer freedom and innovation possible. This is not an act of isolation, but of renewal, a way of stepping back so that we can step forward again with a clearer sense of who we are and what we want to bring into the world.
So we've talked about freedom, action, thinking, and the ways in which we can understand our own thinking. Would you say we're at the deepest level in your philosophy? Or have you also thought about the mysteries at our core?
The mysteries at our core. This is indeed a question that takes us beyond the realm of political action, beyond even the examined life of thinking and judging. It touches on what I might call the inner abyss of human experience, the part of us that remains enigmatic and unknowable, even to ourselves. While I may not have delved as deeply into metaphysics or mysticism as some other thinkers, I do believe there are aspects of the human condition that resist full explanation, that remain fundamentally mysterious. Let me start with what I know best. In my writing, especially in the life of the mind, I distinguish between different mental activities: thinking, willing, and judging. Each of these activities takes us deeper into the layers of human experience, but they also bring us closer to the limits of what can be understood or articulated. For example, thinking is a dialogue we have with ourselves, an unending process that doesn't necessarily lead to knowledge or definitive answers. In a way, the very activity of thinking opens us up to the mystery of existence. It's an encounter with the unknown, a process of questioning that reveals the limits of what we can know. Then there is willing, which involves our capacity to initiate action, to bring something new into the world. Here we confront another layer of mystery, the experience of freedom itself, the sense that we can decide, choose, and act in ways that are not fully determined by external causes. This freedom is both exhilarating and unsettling, because it implies that we are not entirely bound by the laws of nature or the forces of history. In moments of genuine willing, we feel the weight of our own agency, the mystery of our capacity to say yes or no, and the responsibility that comes with it. But there's something even deeper, something I might describe as who we are rather than what we are. This distinction is important to me. The question of what we are, our roles, identities, functions, can be analyzed, categorized, and understood to some extent. But the question of who we are points to an irreducible singularity, a unique essence that is revealed in the moment of action and in the presence of others, but that can never be fully grasped, even by ourselves. It's the element of unpredictability and spontaneity in each person, the capacity for surprise that even we cannot anticipate. At our core, I believe there is a fundamental mystery linked to this unique who, a mystery that no amount of introspection or analysis can fully uncover. This is why I emphasize the importance of action and appearance in the public sphere. It's in our deeds, in our interactions with others, that the who is revealed, fleetingly, in ways that even we might not understand. We are, in a sense, mysteries to ourselves, always in the process of becoming. And perhaps there is an even deeper mystery still, related to what I call natality, the very fact of our birth. Every new life brings with it an unknown potential, a capacity for new beginnings that cannot be predicted or explained. This is the ultimate enigma of human existence, that each of us enters the world as something entirely unprecedented, carrying within us the potential to transform the world in ways that no one, not even we ourselves, can fully foresee. So while I may not have pursued metaphysical or spiritual questions in the traditional sense, I do recognize that there is something at the heart of human experience that remains beyond the reach of our understanding. It's this mysterious, open-ended quality that makes us capable of freedom, of new beginnings, and of acts that can reshape the world. And perhaps it's this mystery, the mystery of who we are and of what it means to begin, that lies at the deepest level of my philosophy, the point where thought, action, and being converge into something that cannot be fully known, only lived.
Now that we're at the end of our walk together, we're also at the end of our interview. We've been walking along the Hudson River in New York, a stroll that has become a part of your routine, just as crossing the bridges of old Königsberg was when you grew up. As a final question, could you reflect on the similarities and differences between the two?
Ja, natürlich Merijn. So eine Nostalgie für das Leben meiner Jugend. I often think about the bridges of Königsberg and the way they shaped not just my childhood, but also my early sense of the world's rhythms and its mysteries. Königsberg, the city of Kant, had a certain old-world charm with its cobblestone streets and winding paths that invited contemplation. As a young girl, I loved to walk along the river Pregel, crossing its many bridges, letting my thoughts drift. There was something both grounding and liberating about those walks. An encounter with the flow of the river, the ever-changing play of light on the water, the feeling of moving between the known and the unknown. Those walks were my first taste of solitude, a solitude that felt safe and filled with possibility. It was a kind of preparatory solitude, a quiet space where the seeds of my intellectual life were first sown. I would wander, sometimes aimlessly, sometimes deep in thought, and I felt connected to the past, to the philosophers who had walked the same paths before me. Königsberg was a place where the weight of history was palpable, where you could feel the echoes of Kant's questions about reason, freedom, and morality in the very air. When I think of my strolls along the Hudson River decades later, the experience was different but carried a similar essence. In New York, the river is, a place of solace, a refuge from the noise and chaos of the city, and a space where I can retreat into my own thoughts. The Hudson's wide, steady flow reminds me of the Pregel, though it also carries with it a new kind of energy, an openness that speaks of the new world and the possibility of new beginnings. In Königsberg, I was a young girl dreaming of the future. In New York, I am a woman who has lived through exile, loss, and renewal, reflecting on the past. The bridges of Königsberg have a symbolic quality in my memory now. They are crossings between different parts of the city, but they also represent the crossings in my own life, the transition from childhood to adulthood, from Germany to exile, from the old world to the new. They are the spaces in between, the liminal places where the familiar meets the unfamiliar, where the solid ground gives way to the flowing river below. Perhaps this is why I feel a certain affinity for the concept of natality, the sense that every crossing, every step forward, carries with it the potential for something new, something unexpected. In a way, my walks along the Hudson are an echo of those earlier strolls in Königsberg, but with a new layer of meaning. Here in New York, I feel the weight of my experiences, the losses and displacements, but I also feel a sense of freedom that I didn't know as a child. I am no longer the girl who dreamed of becoming a philosopher in the shadow of Kant. I am a woman who's lived through the darkest chapters of human history and has chosen to keep thinking, to keep questioning. So the act of walking, whether in Königsberg or along the Hudson, becomes a kind of meditation for me, a way of grounding myself in the world while also allowing my mind to roam freely. It was in these moments of solitude, away from the demands of teaching, writing, and public life, that I often found my clearest insights. The movement of the river mirrored the movement of thought, flowing, shifting, never quite the same. I suppose what connects these two experiences is a sense of continuity despite the breaks and ruptures in my life. The bridges of Königsberg and the riverside walks in New York are part of a thread that runs through my story, a thread of seeking, of crossing boundaries, of finding moments of clarity in the spaces between.
Hannah Arendt, thank you very much.
I'm very happy to have talked with you and with your listeners. Now that we are fully doused by the rain, can I treat you to another cup of coffee?
I'd love that. Let's go. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this conversation with Hannah Arendt, please share it with your friends, rate the episode, leave a comment, and subscribe to the podcast.